Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 18 waiver wire pickups for fantasy football in 2021. Inside today's video, we're going to be going in depth into some running backs, wide receivers, as well as tight ends that I believe you guys should be looking to pick up off the waiver wire right now. But before we can get on into the video, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, because not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 fantasy football championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure to hit that like button down below to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. I would also like to ask, if you guys are on Twitter and would like to follow me on there, to please do so at Notorious FNTSY. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 18 waiver wire pickups. We begin with the running back position, headlined by Le'Veon Bell, running back of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going up against the Carolina Panthers this week at home in Tampa Bay. In the Bucs' comeback victory last week up against the Jets, they ended up having Ronald Jones suffer an injury, as well as Keyshawn Vaughn, which could mean that both of them could be out this week up against the Carolina Panthers. This pickup is under the assumption that Ronald Jones, as well as Keyshawn Vaughn, do not end up suiting up in this game up against the Carolina Panthers. Last week, up against the Jumbo Jets, in a revenge game for Le'Veon Bell, he had 3 rushes for 5 yards, as well as having 3 receptions on 3 targets for 30 yards. I believe up against the Carolina Panthers defense is not the most ideal matchup, but if the Buccaneers are going to be playing their starters like Bruce Arians says, that I think Le'Veon Bell could have a very solid role carved out in this offense as the lead running back, again assuming that Keyshawn Vaughn as well as Ronald Jones are not good to go in this game. So make sure you pick up Le'Veon Bell if you are not as confident like me that I believe that Ronald Jones and Keyshawn Vaughn are not going to play this week. Then you could go ahead and look elsewhere at the running back position. My next waiver wire add at the running back position is Jaret Patterson, running back of the Washington football team, going up against the New York Football Giants this week in New York. Gibson was on the COVID IR last week, and to me, it seems very unlikely that the team would risk an injury to their star running back, to Antonio Gibson, who, when healthy, could honestly be one of the best running backs in the NFL. Why would you risk injury on a player of that caliber in week number 18 when your team isn't going to make the playoffs? They're out of the playoffs. They're playing up against the Giants. I could go in and be the running back and we could beat the Giants, or the Washington football team could beat the Giants. So Jaret Patterson here should be in the lead role on this team. Last week, up against the Philadelphia Eagles, in that lead role, he had 12 rushes for 57 yards, as well as scoring a touchdown. He also had 5 receptions on 5 targets for 41 yards. A very solid performance for Jaret Patterson. I think this week, up against the Giants defense that just sucks complete and utter donkey hog, up against the run, up against the pass, they suck offensively, they suck defensively, they're terrible on special teams. All 3 phases of the game, they completely suck at. So Jaret Patterson should have no issue at all having a very solid performance here. Again, assuming that Riverboat Ron lets Antonio Gibson go on ice. There's really no reason to play Antonio Gibson. Please, Riverboat Ron, do not play Antonio Gibson this week. Next up, we move to Boston Scott, running back of the Philadelphia Eagles, going up against the Dallas Cowboys. While Scott was placed on the COVID IR list yesterday, on Monday, it is entirely possible that he could return to play this week up against the Dallas Cowboys in week 17, up against the Washington football team. He had 14 rushes for 47 yards, as well as scoring 2 touchdowns. He also had 4 receptions on 4 targets, going 4 for 4, like he was at Wendy's, for 38 yards. Obviously, last week, I was kind of off of Boston Scott, and I thought that Nick Sirianni, and I still believe this, that Nick Sirianni just has this fucking love affair for giving the ball to Jordan Howard. That was not the case last week, as Boston Scott dominated. The matchup is far from ideal up against the Dallas Cowboys, but I do believe that Boston Scott will be able to get it done as long as he is the lead back here, which will be the case as long as he is cleared from COVID. Next up, we move to Rex Burkhead, running back of the Houston Texans, going up against the Les Titans this week in Houston. In week 17, up against the 49ers, Burkhead had 16 carries for 47 yards, as well as having 6 receptions on 6 targets for 32 yards. Sadly, though, he did have a fumble in the game. The real hope here, if you're picking up Rex Burkhead and have to play him this week, is that the Titans defense is as bad against the run as they were last week up against the Dolphins. I understand, but Nick, the Dolphins got absolutely destroyed by the Titans, you idiot. I can't believe you thought the Dolphins were going to win. I'm a fan of the Dolphins. I thought we could win that game, and the Dolphins just got a steaming, hefty shit taken right on their chest by the Tennessee Titans. But the defense was really bad against the run. Duke Johnson was hammering them in every single time he ran the ball. The problem was they were down by so many points that they didn't run. And early on in the game, despite the fact that the run was working, they just weren't calling more run plays. It made absolutely no fucking sense. At least the Houston Texans will hopefully at least give Rex Burkhead 16, 20 carries in this game. And even if they are down, I think Rex Burkhead could have a solid day. Again, because the Tennessee Titans defense wasn't that great against the run last week. Final running back to discuss in today's video before we pivot into the wide receiver position is Ty Johnson, running back of the New York Jumbo Jets, going up against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo this week. Johnson could be in for a humongous workload this week with Michael Carter in the concussion protocol, as well as Tevin Coleman potentially out in this game. In Week 17, up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tampa Bay Tom Brady, he had 5 rushes for 35 yards, as well as scoring a touchdown. He also had 3 receptions on 4 targets for 47 yards. This Jets offense has actually been looking pretty solid as of recently. A lot of people were quick to kind of dig the fucking hole and throw Zach Wilson into it and cover the hole up, right? Just dig this guy a grave for his 6, 7, 8 games of an NFL career, right? People were so quick to kind of push the guy out, say that he's a bust. Of course he wasn't a bust based off of a couple of games in his NFL career. Again, going up against the Buffalo Bills will be a tough task, but if you are down astronomical at the running back position, you can certainly play Ty Johnson this week. Again, assuming that Michael Carter as well as Tevin Coleman do not play in this game. Next up, we move to the wide receiver position, headlined by KJ Osborne, wide receiver of the Minnesota Vikings, going up against the Chicago Bears in this game. Now, I understand last week the Chicago Bears bent the New York Football Giants over a table. That defense was all over the offense. The offense of the Giants was limp dick in that game. But this week, the Minnesota Vikings should be with Mr. You like that, Kirk Cousins under center. So without Adam Thielen, Osborne is in a great situation to succeed as the number 2 receiver on the team. Last week, even with Sean Mannion under center, even up against a tough defense in the Green Bay Cheeseheads, the Packers, he had 3 receptions on 5 targets for 50 yards and a score. KJ Osborne is the clear number 2 in this offense, again, to further reiterate on the Minnesota Vikings without Adam Thielen. And I believe that here with Kirk Cousins back and with the Chicago Bears defense, I understand maybe they're on fire. They had a good game last week. There's a big difference between playing the Giants and the Minnesota Vikings, so I think KJ Osborne will do mighty fine in this matchup. Next up, we move to Marquez Callaway, wide receiver of the New Orleans Saints, going up against the Atlanta Falcons this week in Atlanta. With Taysom Hill under center, for some reason, miraculously, as of recently, Callaway has started to really pay off and play quite well. Now, if you guys were watching my videos in the offseason, basically me, as well as every single fantasy analyst in the universe, was banging the fucking drum like I was Donkey Kong, in that if you ever played that GameCube game where you get the bongos and you gotta control Donkey Kong with them. That's basically what I was doing, just banging the drum aggressively for Marquez Callaway. Because in preseason, Callaway was the clear lead receiver here in New Orleans, and with Michael Thomas potentially not returning for a while in the season, obviously he never even ended up coming back, but our thought process was, oh, maybe he'll be back in 8 weeks. Callaway's going to be the clear number 1 receiver, and then Callaway was just snoozing in your line, putting up dumpster fires of matchups, and then recently he started to catch on, and this week up against Atlanta, in a very solid matchup, I think Callaway could get it done. Last week up against the Carolina Panthers, Marquez Callaway had 6 receptions on 10 targets for 97 yards. Again, gonna kind of reiterate, Taysom Hill fucking sucks at being an NFL quarterback. Now, how many times has Nick said that someone sucks? It's true. Taysom Hill's not a very good NFL quarterback, but even with him not being the ideal quarterback, it doesn't matter because for some reason, he has just found this liking to throw the ball to Callaway. If he's able to see 8, 9, 10 targets in this matchup up against Atlanta, he honestly does have the upside to be a top 24 wide receiver on the week. Next up, we move to Braxton Berrios, wide receiver of the New York Jets, going up against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo in this game. But before we go into this in-depth breakdown of Braxton Berrios, I would like to ask that if you have ended up enjoying thus far, to please make sure to hit that subscribe button, as well as hitting that like button down below. It would help me out a ton. So Braxton Berrios was put in a very solid role last week up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, though the situation does have potential to change with other players coming off of the injury list. With that said, if your league gives points to the receiver, the running back, whoever the kick returner is on the team for punts and kickoffs, then Braxton Berrios has the potential to be a game-breaking wide receiver if he is as involved as he was last week up against the Buccaneers. He had 8 receptions on 12 targets for 65 yards and a touchdown. He also had 2 rushes for 12 yards and a receiving touchdown, so he had 2 total touchdowns, or a rushing touchdown, should say. So he had 2 total touchdowns, 1 receiving and 1 rushing touchdown in that game. He also had a fumble, but you can kind of, just erase that from your mind, like in Men in Black when they hold up the pen and it just erases your mind. That's what you need to do on the fumble, because Braxton Berrios could be the number 1 receiver here up against the Buffalo Bills. Again, that is hoping that the other receivers around him do not return from injury. And again, I do feel a lot more confident playing Berrios in leagues that do give those yards for the kickoff returns as well as the punt returns. Next up, we move to Allen Lazard, the Lazard King, wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers, going up against the Lions this week in Detroit. So I'm officially fucking tired of guessing every single week who's going to be the number 2 wide receiver in Green Bay. Some weeks it's Lazard, other weeks it's MVS, other weeks it's some no-name receiver you've never even heard of. I'm going to tell you to pick up Allen Lazard. I'm going to tell you to play Allen Lazard, but don't be surprised at all if Allen Lazard shits the bed when you need him most in your championship in a soft serve, cupcake, simple matchup up against the sorry Detroit Lions defense. And the reason why I worry is because one week it's Lazard, the next week it's MVS. It is basically just making you pull your fucking hair out, trying to figure out which receiver to start for the Green Bay Packers. Again, I think Lazard's the number 2 receiver, but when you asked me last week, I would have told you it was MVS. Last week up against the Minnesota Vikings, 6 receptions on 6 targets for 72 yards and a touchdown. Up against Detroit is a very easy matchup. I am just pretty worried about the fact that they just switch up who the number 2 receiver is all the time on the team, as well as the fact that Aaron Rodgers might just get pulled at half in this game. The next receiver to talk about before we pivot into the tight end position is Sorrell Grayson, wide receiver of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going up against the Carolina Panthers. Now, I want to make note that while Antonio Brown just ran off the fucking field, while Bruce Arians said he was cut, based upon what the NFL Wire transaction actually says, Antonio Brown, as I'm recording this at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, Antonio Brown is still technically on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but the assumption obviously is that AB is not going to play this week and that his ass is cut. But again, the NFL Wire transaction list does not tell us that Antonio Brown was cut. So while Antonio Brown just stormed off the field like a crazy person, miraculously, this man I've never heard of, Sorrell Grayson, was elevated to the number 2 role in this offense behind Mike Evans. In that game up against the Jumbo Jets, 6 receptions on 8 targets, 1 more target off of being very nice with going 6 of 9 for 81 yards as well as a touchdown. Up against the Carolina Panthers, it is entirely possible that they lay an absolute smackdown, and Tampa Bay Tom Brady does end up getting removed from the starting quarterback position in that game. They pull him, kind of like what I was talking about with Aaron Rodgers, but if that's the case, I don't think they would end up pulling Grayson from the game, so I still think he would be playing in that scenario. Now we pivot to the tight end position before we close out today's video. Today's video is much quicker than the normal waiver wire videos because in week 18, there is a whole lot of variance, and there aren't honestly that many great ads this week. Cole Kmet, tight end of the Chicago Bears, going up against the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. Cole Kmet did disappoint immensely last week, but he has been a pretty consistent tight end recently, besides obviously that shitty game. Regardless of who ends up starting at quarterback, if it's Fields, if it's Dalton, I'm still confident playing Cole Kmet as he has been successful even when 9-inch Nicholas Foles was under center last week up against the Giants. 3 receptions on 5 targets for 25 yards. The offense didn't really have to do anything. They were just set on cruise control because the defense was just getting so many turnovers. The game was over before the first whistle even blew. So maybe Cole Kmet this week up against the Minnesota Vikings in a closer game. This could be a lot better for Cole Kmet. Final tight end to discuss, final waiver wire player to discuss in today's video to be picking up for week number 18 is Foster Moreau, tight end of the Las Vegas Raiders, going up against the LA Chargers this week in prime time. Foster Moreau played terribly last week, but if Waller misses again, and in a positive matchup up against the LA Chargers, where this could be a tit-for-tat, back-and-forth, high-scoring affair, then I want to go ahead and play Foster Moreau because I think he could bounce back in this game. Last week up against the Colts, 1 reception on 1 target for 9 yards. Obviously, not the most ideal day. If you played him, he got you 0.9 points. Really shit the bed there, but hey, next week, or 1.9 points, or however many points he got, depending on what your league scoring settings is, doesn't matter. Really shit the bed, got under 2 points, so it is what it is, but I think this week up against the Chargers, he could have a much better performance. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. Again, if you did end up enjoying, make sure to hit that like button as well as that subscribe button. I would appreciate it greatly. I love you guys all. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, goodbye.